that screens flicker, in funny words inviting me to clicker. In the gentle glow of Texan breeze, find my solace in the space. Devise a song, a soothing tone. In this vast network, I'm never alone. With everybody, a sense of peace. In this little haven, worry, cease gone. Blue light, keep the pace. Digital steps, dark be guiding me through life, through life. Oh, take solace, warm embrace. Keep up in the day, your road night. You're my guiding beacon in the tangled digital waves. Lines of the road, pulse like the city. In this cyber symphony, there's no pity. Soft clicks and horns of a melody, guiding me to where I long to be. You're my guiding beacon in the tangled digital maze, with your bright display. Every key sometimes a riddle, every screen a new day. So lay your dreams, so they carry me away. With fuzzy secret coming as the rain digital chorus, I'll never feel pain. You're my galactic melody in this world called binary. Guiding my heart through the roads and ones endlessly. You're the light, keep me safe in your warm digital embrace.
Wired in the land of ones and zeros, where I stand guard, I'm your hero. Navigating the complex sea, digital world, it's you and me. Stepping through the codes I glide, in a world where secrets hide. On the gateway to every side, keeping data safe day and night. I'm the sentinel, strong and true. Hackers can't break through. I'm the shield keeping you whole. In the cyber party I control. Through the firewalls I'm alive, dodging threats with every bite. Built to protect with layers deep, in this web of life I keep. I'm the sentinel, strong and true, navigating safely through. With my guard up, you'll stay free. In the cyber, you feel trust in me. With every click, I guide you right through the maze under electric light. Guarding keys, those vaults of gold, safer than the storing you and gold. Riding the currents of a digital stream, defending your dreams from a hacker's scheme. Empowered by trust, fortified strong in this connected world where you belong.
Welcome to the weekly Cybersecurity Briefing. In the interest of making the best of everyone's time, cybersecurity briefings are always kept to 15 minutes. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat and they will be answered after the briefing. Without any further ado, here is your host, Ron Trotto.
Hello, once again, it is Friday. It is February 21st, 2025. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Briefing. We got a lot to cover today, so we'll get right on it. We're going to start with, let's start with a question. My IT guys got my back on this, right? They'll handle all this stuff. Yeah. Well, we're going to discuss that today. See, it's complicated like many things, and you probably heard me say this before if you've listened to the program at all in the past. Things have changed quite a bit in the last 6 months. Things have changed significantly. And we're going to have a discussion around, whether or not your IT guy has your back. Now, I want to be very clear and upfront with you that most IT guys do have your back with IT things. And unfortunately, your expectation may not be what you should have from your IT guy. Now, let me explain this a little bit better. You see, if you were to look at an enterprise org chart, well, you have a couple roles that deal with IT. You've got your chief technology officer or your CTO. Then you have a CISO role, depending on the size of the company. And depending on the structure of the company, that CISO role may actually be above the CTO. The CTO may report to the CISO role in many of these cases. And here's why. The CISO role is there to essentially identify the risks. How do we operate our business and where do the risks exist inside of our operations? And, that's what they do. That's why they're the Chief Information Security Officer. They are there to ensure that the information is secure. A lot of this is done at a business analytics level. This is not a technical position. In fact, most CISOs that I know are more project management types, more business analyst types than they are technical. Now, they have to understand some of the technology that goes into it, but they're not bleeps plops kind of people. They're not those kind of folks. These are people that really spend their time as risk management. That's what they're doing. I'm sure these people are a blast at the casino. But, let's bring that down. And again, we've talked about this many times. Enterprise level everything has been pushed down to small business because we've become reliant on the same tools and the same platforms and everything that large business have. It kind of came along as luggage as we adopted technology for efficiency in our companies. And guess what? Your IT guy, he's not responsible for any of that. He's responsible for delivering the services that you agreed for him to contractually deliver. Now, I could see where the confusion is because they're taking care of your antivirus and your mail spam gateway and all of that stuff, right? These are the things that they take care of day in, day out. And it's true, they are kind of responsible to make sure that those systems are working. However, what they're not responsible for is owning your risk. They're not necessarily responsible for helping you identify the risks that are in your company. They have a little bit better than a pinhole view, but if they're doing their job right, they're at arm's length. They are not up in your business. They're not looking at what is going on. That should be a conversation that they are having with you, but not something that they do. They aren't a C-level inside of your company, and they certainly can't own your risk. So how do you know if your IT provider's got your back? Well, that's a very complicated question to address, but there'll be signs. Here are a few points I'm going to make. Has your IT provider talked to you about risk in your business in the last 3 months? Have they forced you to adopt 2FA, multi-factor authentication, on everything? Have they talked about your usage of applications that you're using inside the company that are new applications? Have they had that discussion with you? Have they asked you about your traveling, like when you're accessing your systems remotely, especially like Office 365? Are they questioning you on that? If you said no to any of these questions, I can tell you right away that They are not fully taking that CISO role. And it's not that they're a bad provider. They could be fantastic at what they're providing. But unless they're engaged with this, then they are not providing that role. That's a separate role that needs to be filled. And that's really the crux of what I want to talk about today. What does that look like? And I'm going to talk a little bit about our model. It's not the only model, but it's the model that I kind of am gravitating towards. And we've really split our business into 3 service delivery. And this is not an advertising or a sales thing. This is the way that I see it, coming from an enterprise background where I've dealt with a lot of security and stuff like that, bringing it down into small business. And the way we drive our business is we have that vCISO role. That CISO role means different things to different clients. Why? Because not every client needs the kind of eyes on and scrutiny that let's say a financial organization does, or like a CPA or a financial advisor who has SEC commission kind of stuff that they have to abide by, right? So they've got compliance reasons that they're going to need a vCISO and the compliance officer. So you're going to need both of those roles, actually. And that means something different to those people than it does to, let's say, a bakery or a restaurant or a small medical practice. Another instance in where a vCISO role is very important to talk about how data flows throughout that company. And because it's a moving thing, you kind of have to have those discussions. And that's why I asked the question of you whether or not you've had those discussions. There are also policy writers. A lot of this has to do with how your people actually transact business on your behalf. Again, it's your behalf. You're the owner, you own the risk. If something goes wrong and you end up exfiltrating your client's data, then you are responsible. Even if it was a third party, you are still responsible. It's much like getting into a car accident. If you're the unlucky car in the middle that gets rear-ended by old beat up Chevy pickup truck who has no insurance, and you slam into a Maserati in front of you, well, it sucks to be you, because your car is the one that did damage to the Maserati. You're going to have to pay for that damage, even though it was really through no fault of your own. You just got to hope that you can collect from the guy behind you. And it's kind of like this with your cyber risk. It's your risk. You own it. You own the business. You own the risk. So keep that in mind. When you're having that discussion. This isn't something that you can give to someone else or pay someone a monthly fee to just take care of for you. You own that risk, so you do need to be mindful of that. What does it look like, though? What does managing risk look like? Well, I can tell you from our experience, what risk looks like is an initial assessment. And you take that asset inventory. We talked about that a little bit in the past. Always talking about the asset inventory, because it's not just your devices. It's the software you use. It's the data that you collect. These are all assets that you're using. You need to figure out how to use them in your business to figure out your risk. So it starts with that. But it doesn't end there, because you're going to have to mitigate risk through a bunch of different avenues. When I say mitigate, I mean just stomp it down where you don't have a bellyache when you think about it. Your last mitigation step is cyber insurance. That's not your first step. Never should be. Insurance is always a last step, desperate way of getting back to normal, getting back to operation mode. It's not the immediate relief valve that everyone thinks it is. There's so much impact that happens to an organization that gets hit with a cybersecurity incident. It's really about identifying, and sometimes you just live with the risk. Sometimes there really isn't action to take. Sometimes you don't even need to bring in an IT provider for this. Sometimes it's, we shut down operations if things go that far south, and that's that. And that's okay. as long as it is something that has been looked at and you as an owner have made the decision to mitigate the risk in that way. Now, are we a good fit for a client like that? No, we are not, because we're not set up to take on that much risk. We call it the risk sandwich. We'll take a nibble of it, but it's your risk. And I really don't want to share that level of sandwich with you at that time. And it doesn't mean that, we're totally indemnified from everything. If we don't do the job on the things that we promise, then, we're going to get called during time of some type of incident. But that's really not what it's about in the planning stage. It's about identifying it, giving the options to the owner, and then consistently monitoring and updating the policies that govern those decisions. We call those controls. That's the technical term inside. We're going to put in controls. These are things like 2FA. These are things like requiring data to be living in different spaces, stuff like that. We put in these controls to help the owner mitigate the risk from a technical standpoint. And those are the things that we get to make. We just really want to make those things work to mitigate as much risk as possible, to get it off the table as much as possible. But ongoing monitoring is critical to make sure that some risks don't pop back up. How do you know that, for instance, something is running or working if it just stops and silently stops doing its job? How do you know that it's there? This is like having a worker that's in the warehouse who just doesn't show up, but you really didn't track that if they show up or not. And then just one day, no one can do anything because that worker's responsibility was to provide something that everyone else relied upon. And, that worker's been gone for a couple of weeks, and now it just hit a point where things can't get done. It's the same deal with all of the policies and tools that are put in place, and that's your IT company's job. So it is the job of the CISO or the virtual CISO to kind of establish or help establish, with the owner's help, the risk that is in the company and come up with some plans to get the owner's buy-in to manage that risk. It's the security provider responsibility to take those plans and implement them. They're the ones that are going to be watching and monitoring and making sure that stuff is kind of adhering to the plan. And then you have the IT provider role. That IT provider is there to make sure that computers are up and running, that all those tools are continuing to run and do the things that they need to do. With those three roles inside of a company, you're very well served. And if you're expecting that one IT role to do the other two roles, that's where the unfortunate news I have to break to you is that your expectations are out of alignment with the current reality. It's just no one's told you that yet. And to be honest, most IT guys are afraid to tell you this because they know that either they are not fully established in these other areas or they're not entirely sure themselves because, perhaps they aren't the greatest business analysts out there. They aren't this virtual CISO role for it. And that's how kind of we're moving forward. And, we want to coexist with security providers and with IT providers, especially ones that do their job well. We need those people. And I'm happy to kind of work with them just in the vein of all ships rise with the tide. If we bring this in, we're going to make a stronger business community out of it. And that's the whole reason why I do all the things like I do like this. It's because I really want to help raise the awareness level and help bring this together so that we can build stronger business communities and they'll support our local communities. That's the end goal here. So that being said, I don't see any questions coming in quite yet. I'm hoping we get some. Please, if you're watching this on the rerun, put some comments in. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this. How do you feel about your cybersecurity footing right now? Do you feel that things are good? What's holding you back? I'm curious to know what's holding you back from, even talking to me for 15 minutes. I'm going to put that down below. You can talk to me for 15 minutes. And it's about you. It's not about us. It's not about our services. It's about you. Where are you with your business? Where does your major risk lie? What are your concerns? Have you had some bad experiences? What's going on like with your business? We'll love to hear from you. Love to have those 15-minute conversations. It helps me tailor this content to achieve our end goal. So I would love to talk to you about that. Schedule some 15 minutes with me down below, and let's get on this. Let's get on this. All right. I'm pretty sure one of my peers has put me up to this question, but is our end goal to uh, basically get your current IT provider out? I'll be honest with you, I'd love to. I'd love to have that part of the business, but I'm not going to do that if they're doing their job. And I'm not going to be there as a thorn in their side either, provided they do their job if I was to provide cybersecurity services. Now, not every provider is like that. We have some pretty clearly defined roles and rules of engagement with this. So, you know, we've been around the block a little bit. We understand it. So yeah, thanks for that. One of my peers put me on the spot, but um, it's really about getting those first two pieces in, making sure that the risk is identified, making sure that there's a plan to identify that risk going forward. What does that look like? Well, virtual CISO's role typically for us, engagement, is we do that initial risk assessment. We meet as often as we need to meet to get things into a place where we feel comfortable, that policy's in place. Again, that vCISO rights policy, they're not the ones approving it. That's the owner. The owner has to take ownership of it, and they have to approve the policy, and they have to establish some type of culture that cares about security. We really need to get into a culture of security set mindset in that business to make this work. Otherwise, it goes by the way of the handbook. The only time that people look at the handbook is when they want something out of it. These need to be active documents, active policies. They have to live and breathe. They have to be enforced, which means someone needs to monitor, which falls into that cybersecurity piece. They have to be monitored so that they can be enforced. You also have to monitor for all the new stuff that comes down the pipe every day. These are different types of threats, but it's also, let's talk about AI. AI is something that came down the pipe out of practically nowhere. If you were to ask me last year, what did I think of AI? I'd be like, oh, it's great. Helps you out with a few things. Now we are radically rethinking how AI is adopted within businesses because it's such a powerful tool. It's the new way of getting the most efficiency out of everything that you've invested in from a technological standpoint. But it's also one of the most dangerous things that you can bring into your business at all levels. If you invest a lot into a single tool and that tool is either acquired or disappears overnight, your investment that you put in is lost to a certain extent because you can't reap without additional investment. You can't reap all of the benefits from it. And I could tell you firsthand, as you put in a lot of effort into this, bringing back that return right now is ridiculous because we have to spend a lot of time altering how we do things inside of AI because it's changing so quickly underneath the covers. Now, it's still efficient for us, but we're also a technology company, so it's easy. But the real danger with AI is not only the risk of not having that tool there, but we have to really actively think about what data are we giving it? How sensitive are we to losing things like intellectual property that might slip? How about our financials? AIs are actually getting really good at financial analysis and trends and insights. These are fantastic things, but you can't just go and give all of your data into an open model because guess what? They're using that data to train the model. And unless you're paying a almost cost prohibitive amount of money, um, you're not getting out of that without paying money if you want to keep that data secure. And in some instances, we can't even have that data leave the building. So they need to go back to, we put everything in the cloud. We're talking about bringing some of this processing power back in a big box that sits in the server and keeps the room warm, just because we want to make sure that it is our data, it is local, and it's not doing anything funny. And we are so early in this process that we can't trust anything out there but putting it in our own cage and watching where the data flows in and out. Um, and some companies are willing to put up that cost and make that investment because it's bringing that level of efficiency into their business. So, but it's bringing that risk in, and that's where the CISO uh, role lies. So when you ask if we want to outdo the local, the conversation's so far beyond that. We want to work with anyone that you have a good experience with. Yeah, we'd work with them. I don't care about that. Neither would any other good security provider or VCISO. If they're really after all of it, you probably want to look at what their true core values are and make sure they're in alignment with yours. You see, I've got another. Oh, we got some questions today. I'm so happy about this. Okay, so why is endpoint protection not part of IT providers' solution? Why are they not protecting you? Well, they are. They are responsible for that piece of it. But what you have to realize is that endpoint protection is not the end all be all of your cybersecurity. It's a very small part. It's a tool. In fact, we don't even name our tools in our contracts. We provide solutions, not tools, because those tools, they're rapidly changing. Um, as the threat surface and the threat types change and move and dance and trend, we have to trend the technology to help support whatever those emerging threats are. So really, that's a delivery thing, and that's what the IT company is going to do. They're going to deliver the stuff um, that your cybersecurity requirements are. Now, everyone should have some type of EDR, which is endpoint. That's the modern wording for antivirus and malware. It's so much more complicated. I'm definitely going to do a cybersecurity briefing 1 week on what the differences are between all of these, because it's all ABC, letters of everything, and you know how we are in our industry. So it's ridiculous how many terms we have inside of our industry. But um, it's not something to be taken away from them. They should be doing this now. If it's not at a level that fits what the cybersecurity need is, and they don't have a tool for that, then it needs to roll up into that cybersecurity role. Like, it needs to come back over to the fence, and maybe they're going to manage that tool or work in conjunction with the IT provider to manage that type of tool. So it's not that they aren't taking care of it. That's just a piece of it. This is more about making sure that you have on at the very end some type of policy, some type of governance, some type of understanding by the owner, and acceptance and write-off of the owner of the risks that they're taking, that the cybersecurity role is going to make sure that those policies are being enforced, and the IT role is to make sure that whatever tools or whatever things, policies that the cybersecurity role have mandated are in fact in place and are kept up to date and running at all times. So it's a little bit complicated, I guess, of an answer, but it's not that your IT provider doesn't have this stuff. It's just where does it align with the rules that are needed for your business? So that's probably, I'm not sure if I made that clear or muddy, but hopefully I addressed that. I think I got it. All right. And we have a couple other. We're at 25 minutes. Any other questions I'm going to address in the comments this week? Maybe this is a good one. If you're still with me, what are your thoughts on maybe a town hall meeting? We do a live. Why don't you reply and let me know if a town hall meeting is good? We can do some open Q&A on this and talk about it. I think I've might have struck a chord with some people because frankly the amount of views we have are pretty far up there. So I'd love to get your input on this. I'd love to see what your thoughts are on maybe having a town hall, something I'd be more than willing to do. But again, we are 10 minutes over our 15 minutes or less. We stay to our 15 minutes or less with the content, but we've got Q&A. And if you do have any other questions, please throw them below. If you want to have that 15-minute conversation, just get it scheduled. You'll see the link down below. Let's get that scheduled and talk about your business, especially if you're not feeling, if your gut's telling you that something's off, and it might be super easy. We might even be able to address it in 15-minute talk on what your next steps are to alleviate that and make sure your gut's back to feeling well. We got enough things to worry about. This is not one of them that we should be worrying about right now. All right, with that, I'm going to close it out. Thank you again for joining me on our cybersecurity briefing. Look forward to you joining us next week, 10 a.m. Same bad channel, same bad time. See you then. Have a great week.